As we continue talking about covered faces, what more iconic than the Phantom of the Opera? It's a beautiful mask. However, as I'm still invisible, as you may know from yesterday, catch the whole story there if you haven't, I really just wanted to, spice it up a little bit. Just invade your minds, talk about some ideas, covering my face further. No, don't be leaving comments saying that I'm going insane. What are you talking about? I'm totally fine. Everything is fine. Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome back to the month of monsters. Today we're talking about a very iconic, a very classic monster, the Phantom of the Opera. As you may know, if you've been following this series, I'm currently invisible, hence the bandages. Now you might be wondering, why didn't you go for like a Lon Chaney prosthetic? Something fancy, something expensive. Do you think we have the budget for that? We're barely making it as is. I've already had to find a cure for vampirism, I had to find a cure for being a werewolf, and now I have to somehow figure out how to become visible again at the end of this week, or else we're not getting through this thing. My apologies. I don't like to lose my mind. I'm perfectly stable, I promise you. There's been no side effects whatsoever. Anyways, the Phantom of the Opera, of course, is another faces-covered kind of monster. Whether it be a full skull mask, whether it be the iconic half mask that has been associated with the character for many years now, the Phantom of the Opera is something that many people know, and many people have their favorite versions. In fact, I'm kind of going for a half-and-half Claude Rains here. Claude Rains Phantom on one side, Claude Rains Invisible Man on the other. I might be losing my mind, but at least I look like Claude Rains smashed together in the middle. But I'm not losing my mind. Because we're talking about the 1909 French novel The Phantom of the Opera, adapted multiple times. The first adaptation, most famously, was the 1925 silent film by Lon Chaney, a personal favorite of mine. In fact, it is the Phantom of the Opera film I've seen the most. It's an iconic piece. Grand scale, very large set pieces, very iconic moments. In fact, despite being a silent film, it features a sequence in color with the Mask of the Red Death at the ballet. It is in fact something that was hand-colored, frame by frame by frame by frame by frame, and it has provided one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in cinema, and this is coming from a movie that's nearly 100 years old. You've never seen the Lon Chaney version of the Phantom of the Opera. It may not be a musical, it may not be as captivating as some other versions, but it will grind you into dust as it shows you the most inspiring visuals you'll see of a film of that era. It's an iconic piece of film and you can find it almost anywhere. Thank you, public domain laws. But we, of course, have toys based on that iconic version of the Phantom of the Opera. In fact, from two different companies. Super7 with their reaction line, and Mego with their Mego line. Both versions are trying for different Phantom of the Operas from the Lon Chaney version. And let's take a look at both of these, as we dive into the madness, the romance, the horror, the impossible musical of the Phantom of the Opera.
Our first Phantom today will be the Super7 reaction figure. We talked about one of these previously with the Wolfman, and yet again, the packaging art is the biggest draw. A beautiful portrait of Lon Chaney as the Phantom on the front, and it is very nice to see this kind of figure. The back of the card shows all the figures in the two waves of Universal Monsters reaction figures at the time. As you can see, a nice selection of monsters are included. Looking at the Phantom himself, he's very much the unmasked, true self version of the Phantom from the end of the film. It is an iconic look for sure, and it makes for a nice looking action figure. Not sure how it'll fit with 80s toy displays, but that's not really why we're here. As you can see, the face sculpt is simplistic yet evocative. It has the feeling of Lon Chaney Phantom, if it does not have the detail of Lon Chaney Phantom. It is an imitation, but a good one, in the retro toy sense. The back of the figure is fairly plain. It's just a suit body. He's got some coattails. There's some markings on his legs, denoting copyright details. Articulation is bare minimum. Just a head, just shoulders, just legs. The legs do have a cut for the coattails, which means he does look weird when his legs are moved. Posing the Phantom with the Wolfman, they are in the same scale. At least they're all around 3.75 inches tall. A very common scale for different action figure lines, but not so common for the Universal monsters. A reaction figure is designed to go with old Kenner figures, so here is Bosk, the bounty hunter, with the Phantom, and you can see that they would make an interesting duo. Changing gears to Mego, the Phantom was released twice in Mego's line. First was in the sort of revealed state, the Lon Chaney iconic Phantom look, which this figure ended up being underproduced as my pre-order was never filled and I never got one, and I'm still a little irate about it if you ask me. It's just one figure, sure, but it was one I wanted to own. However, the other Mego Phantom is the Phantom dressed as the Mask of the Red Death from that iconic sequence in the film. This allows me to have a more unique Phantom figure, so I'm a little less upset about missing out on the first one. The Mego Red Death is presented in a beautiful red suit with a red cloth cape, a beautifully draped, beautiful skull face on top of it. From the back, you can see that cape has kind of a plush quality, similar to the Mego Dracula we looked at before. It has a very nice flowing look to it. I very much appreciate it. However, the plain hat without the feather, that is a bit of a bummer. But that should not discourage from this wonderful skull head put on top. It looks very similar to the one seen in the film, if not 100% accurate. It is that detail put through the Mego filter. Removing the hat, you can see that the skull face is pretty symmetrical and boring without the hat to add the flair, but it is there, and there we shall look at it. Interestingly, the Velcro is on the front of the suit for once. Usually it's on the back. This is just how they did it. It does look quite strange. And what's interesting is the shoes are definitely too small for the normal Mego feet, and I wonder what horrors lie within them. If anyone is surprised by the articulation range in Mego, you haven't been paying attention. It's the same joints each time as it's the same body underneath all of them. Nothing is restrictive here, however. I appreciate that the cape can wrap around the body of the Phantom. It gives him a regal look, a mysterious look, a look that he's trying to hide something. I wouldn't know what that felt like. Scale-wise, if you put the Mego Phantom with the Reaction Phantom, they're of course in different size classes. One is a relic of the 70s, one is a relic of the 80s. Both were produced in the modern era.
That concludes our special on the Phantom of the Opera. An iconic story, an iconic tale. I feel close to it with this mask. If only I could be seen. If only I could be heard. Wait, I still can't be heard. I think tomorrow we're going to change gears. There'll still be bandages involved, but it won't be an Invisible Man or a Phantom, and it won't be played by Claude Rains. In fact, we're going to look at the other iconic role of Boris Karloff, not the one you're thinking of, but the one that he was also known for. And no, it's not the one that was later played by Arnold Vosloo. This is, in fact, The Mummy. Tomorrow, and for the rest of the week, we are going to be covering one of the most iconic monsters ever. And hopefully, nothing more happens to me in the meantime.